They said I was too old to celebrate. Too old for laughter, for music, for joy. My daughter-in-law canceled the party I'd been dreaming about for months. She called it a circus. And my son. He just agreed. I smiled that day and said, no problem. But inside, something in me broke. A quiet kind of heartbreak only a mother understands. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I simply watched as the people I loved most showed me exactly who they had become. But weeks later, everything changed. The same woman who mocked my birthday started calling me over and over again, and when she did, she had no idea I was no longer the same woman she thought she could humiliate. Because this time, I wasn't the clown in their circus. This time, I was the ringmaster. Before we continue, tell me where you're listening from. Don't forget to add your country's flag and the city you're in. I read every comment, and it truly warms my heart to see how far our stories travel. It all began on a Tuesday. I remember because it was market day, and I just bought purple carnations for the vase by the front door. I've always believed that a house without flowers is like a heart without a beat. I was arranging them when my phone rang. It was Sophie, my daughter-in-law. Margaret, I need to speak with you. Her voice had that tone, the one she used when she wanted something but disguised it as concern. I, still naive back then, thought perhaps she wanted advice about Daniel, my son. After all, they'd been married 3 years, and I'd always tried to be the mother-in-law who didn't interfere, who respected boundaries. Of course, love. What is it? It's about your birthday. My heart leaped. 3 weeks remained until my 70th, and I'd been dreaming of that gathering for months. Nothing elaborate, just family. Daniel, Sophie, my 2 sisters who live in Manchester, my cousins, some lifelong neighbors. I wanted to prepare shepherd's pie, the recipe my mum taught me that takes 2 full days. I wanted to set the table with the embroidered cloth I'd saved for special occasions. I wanted to feel, even for a few hours, that my family was complete. You see, I raised Daniel alone from the time I was 35. His father, Peter, died of a sudden heart attack while fixing the guttering on our roof. One second he was whistling a Beatles tune. The next he was gone. Daniel was barely 8. I remember how he clung to my skirt at the funeral, trembling, asking if his daddy was coming back. I worked double shifts at the textile factory for 15 years. My hands still bear the marks from the needles, small scars like constellations. I sewed wedding dresses, school uniforms, christening gowns. Every stitch was so Daniel could have new shoes, school supplies, a computer when he started college. I never remarried. Not because I didn't have opportunities. There was a gentleman, Maurice, who owned a hardware shop and invited me for coffee every Sunday after church. He was kind, widowed too, but I always thought, what if Daniel feels I'm betraying his father? What if a stranger makes him feel displaced? So I declined each invitation with a polite smile. Now, at 68, living in the same house Peter and I built brick by brick, I simply wanted a party, a celebration to say, I made it. I got this far. Tell me, Sophie. What about my birthday? There was a pause. I heard her inhale, as if preparing herself. Look, Margaret, Daniel, and I have been thinking. And honestly, we won't be able to organize anything. We're not wasting money on that circus. She called my dream a circus. Besides, she continued, you're too old for that, don't you think? Parties are for young people. You need tranquility, not stress. I felt something inside me crack. Like when you drop a porcelain cup and for a second, before it completely shatters, you see the fracture spreading in slow motion. But I know it's just that things are tight financially, Margaret. We have so many expenses. Perhaps we could take you out for a simple meal another day. How does that sound? Before I could answer, I heard Daniel's voice in the background. Let me have the phone, my son said in that tone he used when he wanted to be firm but not cruel. You're too old for that, Mom. A big gathering will just tire you out. Better to keep it quiet. I looked at the purple carnations in the vase. They were still dripping water onto the mahogany table that had belonged to my grandmother. The same table where Daniel did his homework for 12 years, where we celebrated each of his birthdays with cake and candles, even when sometimes the cake was from the cheapest bakery because I couldn't afford more. No problem, I said. My voice sounded calm, too calm. Perfect, Mum. We love you. We're busy right now. We'll call you later. He hung up. I stood there holding the phone, watching a water drop from the vase form a small puddle on the wood. I didn't cry, not yet. But something inside me knew that in that precise moment, my relationship with my son had changed forever. What I didn't know was that call was just the beginning. And what Sophie didn't know was that she was awakening a lioness who had been asleep for decades. If you want to know how this story of betrayal became my greatest lesson in dignity, subscribe to the channel, because what comes next? Nobody expected, not even me. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at my bedroom ceiling, counting the cracks that had formed over the years. 42. I'd counted them so many times I knew them by memory. I kept thinking about the word Sophie had used, circus. When did my life become a ridiculous spectacle to her? I got up at 4 a.m., as always. I made coffee in the enamel pot Peter gave me on our first anniversary. The smell of fresh coffee filled the kitchen, and for a moment, just a moment, I felt at peace. But then I saw the calendar hanging by the refrigerator. I'd marked my birthday with a red circle and little stars drawn around it, like an excited child. How foolish I'd been. I tore off the calendar page, crumpled it, and threw it in the bin. But I couldn't help retrieving it again, smoothing the paper with trembling hands, and keeping it in the drawer where I store old memories. Because that's who I am. I even keep the pain. What hurt most wasn't the cancellation of the party. It was realizing I'd been blind for 3 complete years. Let me go back. Let me tell you how Sophie entered our lives. It was May, 3 years ago. Daniel came to the house with that nervous smile he wore when he had something important to say. I was watering the pots in the corridor. I've always had plants. Geraniums, bougainvillea. A small basil plant I use for soup. Mum, I want you to meet someone. And there she was, Sophie. With her perfectly straight hair, her nails painted pale pink, her white blouse without a single wrinkle. She smelled of expensive perfume, the kind they sell in department stores at the shopping center. Lovely to meet you. Mrs. Ellis, Daniel's told me so much about you. Her smile was wide, her teeth perfectly white. She extended her hand, and when I took it, I noticed her skin was soft, hands that had never scrubbed floors or washed clothes by hand. Call me Margaret, love, I said. We're not formal here. We went into the house. Sophie looked around with those big, expressive eyes. She stopped in front of the shelf where I keep family photos. What a lovely family, she said, picking up the frame with Peter, Daniel, and me in Blackpool. Daniel was 5 and had just lost his first tooth. You can see you were very happy. We were, I replied, and it was true. That first afternoon, Sophie helped me prepare dinner. I made cottage pie, Daniel's favorite. She chopped tomatoes and onions for the salad, asking about recipes, about how I met Peter, about my work at the factory. It must be wonderful to create dresses with your own hands, she said. I don't have that talent. I'm hopeless in the kitchen. She laughed with that crystalline laugh that made Daniel look at her as if she were the only woman in the world. After dinner, while we washed dishes, Sophie said something that seemed sweet at the time. Margaret, I want you to know I'll take very good care of Daniel, and I hope you'll teach me to be as strong as you are. My mum died when I was little, and I always wanted a mother-in-law who could be like a second mother. I got emotional, my eyes even watered. I hugged her right there with my hands full of soap suds. You'll be part of this family, love. The doors are always open here. How naive I was. The following months were a dream. Sophie came to visit every Sunday. She brought pastries from that expensive French bakery near her work. She gave me hand creams, embroidered scarves, chocolates. I saw this and thought of you, Margaret. Margaret. Back then, the word made me feel important, included. When Daniel announced they would marry, I cried with joy. Finally, my son had found someone. Finally, he wouldn't be alone when I was gone. The wedding was simple. I sewed my own dress, navy blue with lace appliqué. Sophie looked radiant in her white dress. During the father-daughter dance, When Daniel took me to dance as tradition dictates, he whispered in my ear, "Thank you for everything, Mum, for every sacrifice. I promise now I'll take care of you." That promise, how it would hurt to remember it later. The first months of marriage seemed perfect. They kept coming to the house every Sunday. Sophie hugged me, asked how I was, offered to help with shopping. But then I started noticing things, small things. One Sunday, Sophie walked through the living room and stopped in front of the wooden bookcase where I keep family albums and some Staffordshire pottery I collect. "Oh, Margaret, you still have all these old things." "They're from my grandmother," I replied. "They're over 70 years old." Of course. "It's just, I don't know, I think the house would look more modern without so many old ornaments. Have you ever thought about updating a bit?" Daniel laughed. "Sophie has a good eye for decoration, Mum. Maybe you should listen to her." I said nothing, but something in my chest tightened. Another afternoon we were having tea. Sophie looked out the window toward the garden. "Listen, Margaret, isn't this house rather large for you alone?" "Well, yes, sometimes it feels empty," I admitted. "But it's my home. This is where Daniel and I grew up together. All my memories are here." Of course. I'm just saying maintaining a house like this must be expensive. The council tax, water, electricity. Have you ever thought about something more practical? A small flat, for example." "Sophie," Daniel interrupted her. "Leave her be." But I noticed he also looked at the house with different eyes, as if evaluating, as if calculating. The visits began to space out. No longer every Sunday. First every 2 weeks, then once a month. "We have so much work, Mum. The schedule's impossible." "You know how it is, Margaret." I understood, or at least that's what I told myself. They're young, they have their life. I can't be the suffocating mother-in-law who demands attention. But when I called them, Sophie answered hurriedly, "Margaret, I'm busy right now. I'll call you back later." She never called back, and when they visited, Sophie no longer helped in the kitchen. She sat in the living room checking her mobile while I prepared lunch alone. She no longer brought pastries, no longer asked how I was. One afternoon, while I was serving the stew I'd prepared since early morning, I overheard a conversation I shouldn't have heard. They were in the garden. They thought I was in the kitchen, but I'd gone to close the window because it was getting windy. "Seriously, Daniel, your mum should sell this house. Look at it. It's falling apart, and the land must be worth a fortune with how the area's developing. Sophie, I already told you she won't understand. We need the deposit for the flat. And she's here alone, maintaining this old place. It makes no sense. Talk to her. I'm sure she'll understand. It's not that easy." "Of course it's easy. Tell her it's for her own good. That a smaller place is safer for an elderly person. She'll see sense." My hand trembled holding the ladle. I closed the window, harder than necessary. When I returned to the table, I smiled as if nothing had happened. But that night, lying in my bed, I understood something I'd been denying for months. Sophie never saw me as family. She saw me as a resource, and my son, the boy I'd raised alone, who swore he'd take care of me, was letting it happen. But I still hadn't seen anything yet. The mask was just beginning to fall, and when it finally dropped completely, I'd realize I'd been living with a stranger. Exactly 9 days passed since the call where they canceled my birthday. 9 days without hearing from them. No calls, no messages, nothing. I continued with my routine. I got up, made my coffee, watered the plants, watched my afternoon soaps. But there was something different in me. A kind of constant alertness. Like when you know it's going to rain, but the sky is still clear. On the 10th day, Daniel called me. "Mom, what are you doing Saturday?" "Nothing particular, son. Why?" "We want to invite you to dinner at our house. Sophie's going to cook. Sophie cooking." That was news. In 3 years of marriage, I'd never seen her prepare anything more elaborate than a sandwich. "Of course, son. I'll be there. Perfect. Around 7. And Mum, dress nicely." That last phrase left me thinking. Dress nicely for a family dinner at their house. Saturday I put on my sky blue blouse, the one with embroidery around the collar. I pulled my hair into a low bun as my mother taught me. I wore the pearl earrings Peter gave me on our 10th anniversary. I looked in the mirror and wondered why I felt butterflies in my stomach. Butterflies of fear. I took the bus to their estate. They live in a new development, one of those with security gates and perfectly paved streets. Their house is lovely, 2 stories with a front garden. When they opened the door, I noticed something strange. The table was set, but not casually. There was a tablecloth I didn't recognize, wine glasses, napkins folded into flowers, and only 3 place settings. "Mum, come in. Good that you arrived." Daniel kissed my cheek. He smelled of that expensive aftershave he uses now. He no longer uses the one I gave him for birthdays. Sophie came out of the kitchen drying her hands on a tea towel. She wore a black dress, perfect makeup, heels, to be at home on a Saturday night. "Margaret, welcome. Please sit down." She pointed to the middle chair. They sat on either side, as if they were surrounding me. Dinner began calmly. Sophie had prepared chicken in mushroom sauce. It was dry and the sauce tasted like tinned cream, but I ate without saying anything. We talked about unimportant things, the weather, the news, traffic, but I felt the tension floating in the air like smoke. It was after dessert when everything changed. Daniel cleared his throat, exchanged a look with Sophie. She nodded, giving him courage. "Mum, we want to talk to you about something important." I set my fork on my plate. My hands felt cold. "Tell me, son." "You see, Sophie and I have been thinking about our future. We want to buy a larger flat. This one's getting too small for us. And well, we're thinking of having children soon." My heart leaped. "Grandchildren, that was wonderful. Oh, son, what happiness. How can I help?" Daniel looked at his plate. Sophie took control of the conversation. "Look, Margaret, the flat we want costs $850,000. We already have the mortgage approved, but we need $85,000 for the deposit. $85,000. The figure floated in the air like a sentence. "That's a lot of money," I said slowly. "It is," Sophie continued, leaning toward me. "That's why we thought, well, you live alone in that big house. It must be exhausting to maintain it. The council tax, the utilities, repairs. And at your age, I'm 68, Sophie. Not 80. Of course. Don't misunderstand me. I'm just saying a smaller house would be more practical for you. Safer. And the money from the sale could help us with the deposit. You'd rent a lovely flat, modern, without so much maintenance." I looked at my son. I expected him to say something, defend me, say it was madness. But Daniel just stared at his wine glass, spinning it slowly. "It's your house, Mum," he said finally, without looking me in the eyes. "But we're your family, and families support each other, don't they? Think about your grandchildren, about giving them a good home. Grandchildren who didn't yet exist. Grandchildren they were using as bait." "That house," I said, and my voice sounded firmer than I expected. "Your father and I built it, brick by brick. You were born there. Every memory of my life with Peter is there. 35 years of my existence are there. Memories are in the heart, Margaret, not in walls." Sophie smiled at me, but her eyes were cold. "Besides, think about it carefully. What will you do with that house when you can no longer take care of it? When you're elderly and need help, it's better to sell it now while it's still worth something. Elderly. The word hit me like a slap. I don't mean to offend you," she continued. "I'm just being realistic. You won't live forever, and when you're gone, that house will be sold anyway. Wouldn't you prefer to see your son happy and settled with his own family?" The silence that followed was dense. I could hear the tick-tock of the wall clock, the hum of the refrigerator, my own breathing. "I need to think about it," I said. "Of course," Daniel replied quickly, as if he'd been waiting for that answer. "Take your time, Mum. There's no rush." But Sophie added, "Though the owner of the flat is only giving us 3 weeks to gather the deposit. After that, he sells it to someone else, 3 weeks. The same time until my birthday. The birthday they canceled because they didn't want to spend money on that circus. But they did want me to sell my house, my entire life." I stood from the table. My legs trembled, but I wasn't going to let them notice. "I'm leaving. I have to get up early tomorrow." "We'll drive you, Mum." "No, I'll take the bus. I need fresh air." I walked to the door. Sophie caught up with me, putting a hand on my shoulder. "Margaret, Think about it carefully. It's for everyone's good. You'd benefit too, I looked into her eyes. For the first time in 3 years, I really saw her. I saw the ambition, the coldness, the manipulation. Good night, Sophie. On the bus ride back, while the city lights passed by the window, I realized something terrible. My son was asking me to sell my life to finance his, and what was worse, he saw it as something normal, something I should do. I arrived home past 10 at night. I turned on the living room lights. I saw the mahogany furniture that had belonged to my grandmother, the photos on the walls, the bookcase full of memories, the rocking chair where I nursed Daniel for months. I sat in that rocking chair and finally, after days of holding back, I cried. I cried for the naivety of believing Sophie loved me. I cried for my son who had become a stranger. I cried for the sacrifices I'd made that now seemed worthless. But among the tears, something else was growing, a small rage still, but real, because I had given everything, absolutely everything, and now they wanted the only thing I had left. My phone buzzed. A message from Sophie. Margaret, I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable. We just want what's best for everyone. Think about it with love. Kisses. Kisses. I closed my eyes, breathed deeply, and for the first time in my life thought, enough. Monday morning at 7 sharp, my phone rang. It was Sophie. Good morning, Margaret. Have you had breakfast? Did you sleep well? Her voice sounded sweet, too sweet, like when you talk to a child who won't take their medicine. Good morning, Sophie. Yes, thank you. Oh, how lovely. Listen, have you thought about what we discussed Saturday? Barely 36 hours had passed. I'm still thinking about it, love. It's a big decision. Of course, of course. It's just that time's running out, isn't it? We don't want to lose that opportunity. The flat is a gem. It has a view of a beautiful park. Imagine your grandchildren playing there. Again, the imaginary grandchildren. Yes, it sounds lovely. So, do you think by the weekend you'll have an answer? That way we can start moving everything quickly. Sophie, it's only been 2 days. I know, Margaret. Sorry if I'm being pushy, it's just that I'm so excited. Daniel and I have been dreaming about this for months. You understand, don't you? She hung up before I could answer. Tuesday she called at 8 in the morning, Wednesday at 7:30, Thursday twice, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. Always the same song, always the same pressure disguised as enthusiasm. Have you thought about it, Margaret? Margaret, I found a divine rental nearby. Shall we go see it? The seller pressured me today. Says he already has other interested parties. Friday afternoon, I was at the market buying tomatoes when I saw a car park in front of my house. It was Daniel's, but he wasn't alone. There was a man with a briefcase, gray suit, blue tie. I quickened my pace. When I arrived, I found Sophie at my door with that man. She was ringing the bell insistently. Sophie, what are you doing here? She turned with an enormous smile. Oh, Margaret, how good that you arrived. Look, I brought Mr. Foster, an estate agent. I thought it would be good for him to explain exactly how much you could get for your little house, just so you have complete information. Little house. Now my house was a little house. Mr. Foster extended his hand. Madam, pleasure to meet you. Your daughter-in-law hired me to do a preliminary valuation. With your permission, I'd like to have a quick look at the property. Just from outside, of course. That way I can give you an estimate. I didn't authorize any valuation. Of course not, Margaret. Sophie approached, taking my arm. It's just informational, so you know your options. There's no commitment. I looked at Mr. Foster, then at Sophie. Her eyes shone with something that wasn't love. It was something else. Hunger. No, thank you. When I need an estate agent, I'll hire one myself. Sophie's smile wavered for a second. Just a second. As you wish, Margaret. We just wanted to help. They left, but the message had been clear. They weren't going to give up. That night, Daniel called me. His voice sounded tired. Mom, Sophie told me you rejected the valuer. Daniel, I didn't ask for any valuer. I know, but you're making this harder than it should be. Harder for whom, son? Silence. For everyone, Mom. Look, I know it's your house and it has sentimental value, but you have to be practical. Think about the future, about your old age. Who's going to take care of you when you can no longer manage on your own? And selling my house will make you want to take care of me? It's not that. It's just that Sophie is very stressed. The doctor says stress can affect, well, we might be expecting a baby. It's not certain yet, but... And there was the final hook. A baby. Maybe, perhaps, possibly. Son, if Sophie is pregnant, I'm very happy, but that doesn't change my situation. Your situation? His voice rose. Mom, we are your situation. We're your family. If you truly loved us, you'd help us. But it seems that house matters more to you than your own son. Those words cut through me like knives. Daniel, forget it. I thought I could count on you. I thought after everything I did for you, you'd do this for me. But I was wrong. Everything you did for me? I said, and my voice sounded hoarse. Daniel, I raised you alone. I worked double shifts for 15 years. Yes, Mom, I know. You've reminded me 1,000 times. I sacrificed my life for you. I worked so hard for you. But I never asked for any of that. You decided to have me. You decided not to remarry. Those were your decisions. He hung up. I'm so glad you're still here. Would you do me a small favor? Tap the like button and leave a white heart below. Knowing you're still here truly makes me happy. I was left holding the phone, trembling. The tears fell without my being able to control them. My son had just told me that I reminded him too much of my sacrifices, that he never asked me to raise him. I sat in the rocking chair. Outside, the night was dark. Not even the neighborhood dogs were barking. Everything was silent. I thought about all the nights I stayed awake when Daniel had a fever, putting cold cloths on his forehead. I thought about the times I didn't eat, so he could have 3 meals a day. I thought about the shoes I mended over and over because I couldn't afford new ones, and now he told me he never asked for it. Saturday, Sophie appeared again. This time she brought brochures. Margaret, look, I found beautiful flats for rent. This one has 1 bedroom, integrated kitchenette. It's on the ground floor, so you don't have to climb stairs, and it costs only $650 per month. With what you get from your house, you can pay years of rent and still have enough left to help us. I took the brochures, looked at them. Flats the size of my living room, cold white walls, no garden, no history. Sophie, I need more time. Her face hardened. The mask was falling faster and faster. Time is what we don't have, Margaret. Monday. I lose the flat, do you understand? Monday in 3 days. And all because you can't let go of an old house full of junk. Those belongings are my life. Your life is over. She looked me straight in the eyes. I'm sorry if it sounds harsh, but it's the truth. Your husband died over 30 years ago. Daniel grew up and has his own family. Now you cling to a past that no longer exists, and meanwhile, we who are your present are begging for help. Begging, I repeated the word. That's what you're doing. Begging. And what else do you want us to do? Get on our knees? I want you to leave me in peace. The words came out before I could stop them. Sophie froze. Then she laughed, a short, bitter laugh. Fine, we'll leave you in peace. Enjoy your house alone. Enjoy your memories, because that's all you're going to have. She left, slamming the door. I sat on the sofa. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my ears. I picked up my phone, dialed a number I hadn't used in months. Anne? It's Margaret. I need to talk to you. Anne had been my friend for 20 years. We met at the market. She sells flowers. She's one of those women who tells truths without anesthesia. Margaret, what's wrong? You sound strange. I think my son and daughter-in-law want to steal my house. There was a pause. I'm coming over. Anne arrived 20 minutes later with a bag of scones and a thermos of tea. When there are problems, you have to eat, she said, putting everything on the table. Now tell me everything, and don't skip anything. I told her from the call canceling my birthday to Sophie's visit that same morning. Anne listened in silence. Chewing her scone, her eyes narrowed behind her glasses. When I finished, she set her cup down with a sharp bang. That girl is a viper. And your son is a fool. Anne. No, Margaret. Things have to be said clearly. That woman is squeezing you like a lemon, and Daniel is letting her do it. Do you know what smells fishy to me? That suddenly they need $85,000 with such urgency. I sell flowers, but I wasn't born yesterday. There's something hidden there. Do you think so? I don't think. I know. Look, my friend Rosie works at a law firm. Her nephew is a solicitor. He's called Richard Hale. He's a good man and discreet. Do you want me to call him? He can investigate a bit, see if your suspicions have foundation. I hesitated. Investigating my own son sounded so cold, so calculating. But then I remembered Daniel's voice saying, I never asked you to raise me. Call him. Richard came Tuesday afternoon. He was a young man of about 35 with round glasses and a kind smile. He sat in my living room and took out a notebook. Mrs. Ellis, I understand you're going through a delicate situation. Tell me exactly what you need. I explained everything again. He took notes, nodded, asked specific questions. Do you have the full names of your son and daughter-in-law? Do you know where they work? Have they ever asked you to sign documents? I answered everything. Richard closed his notebook. Give me a week. I'm going to check some things. Public records, background checks, basic credit situation, all legal, don't worry. And meanwhile, Mrs. Ellis, some advice, don't sign anything, absolutely nothing. Even if your son asks you, even if they cry, even if they threaten. Understood? I nodded. Richard left. I was left with a strange feeling. Half relief, half guilt. What kind of mother investigates her son? But then my phone vibrated. Another message from Sophie. Margaret, Monday is the deadline. Daniel didn't sleep last night from worry. I don't know if you want to carry that on your conscience. Think about it. I deleted the message. The following days were calmer. They didn't call, didn't visit. It was as if they'd given me a respite. I took advantage to do something I'd been putting off. Thoroughly clean the garden. The May rains had made the grass grow, and some rose bushes looked neglected. I was pruning the white rose bush I planted when Daniel was born, when my spade hit something metallic. Strange. I dug a bit more. It was a box, a rusted metal box the size of a shoebox buried under the rose bush. With trembling hands, I pulled it out. It was closed with an old padlock that broke with one tug. Inside were documents rolled up, protected with plastic. I unrolled them on the dining room table. They were the original deeds of the house, the ones Peter and I signed 40 years ago. And there was something written by hand by Peter on the last page. This house is for Margaret, built with our love and effort. May no one ever take it from you, my love. The tears started falling onto the paper. I had to wipe them quickly so I wouldn't ruin the ink. But there was more in the box. Letters. Love letters that Peter wrote me when we were courting. His cramped handwriting, his clumsy but sincere words. Margaret, you're stronger than 10 men put together. Never let anyone make you feel small. And at the bottom of the box, wrapped in a thick plastic bag, there was money, old banknotes from when $50 notes still existed. I counted them with trembling hands. $10,000. A note accompanied the money, also in Peter's handwriting. For our old age together. My love, for when we can no longer work, so you never depend on anyone. I love you, Peter. I collapsed in the chair. Peter had been saving in secret for years. For me, for us. And I never knew because he died before he could tell me. I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since his funeral. I cried for the man who loved me so much that even after death he was still taking care of me. I cried for all the years I lost without him. I cried for the loneliness, but among the tears something else was happening. A clarity. Peter had left me this for a reason. Not just the money, the words too. Never let anyone make you feel small. And that was exactly what Sophie and Daniel were doing, making me feel small, useless, burdensome. I dried my tears. I put the deeds in a safe place. I counted the money again to be sure. $10,000 exactly. It wasn't enough for the deposit they were asking for, but it was enough for something more important. It was enough to defend myself. Thursday, Richard called me. Mrs. Ellis, I need to see you. Can Anne come too? What I found is better discussed in person. An hour later, all three of us were sitting in my living room. Richard opened his briefcase and took out several papers. Mrs. Ellis, what I'm going to tell you isn't easy to hear, but you need to know it. My heart accelerated. Your son Daniel doesn't need your financial help. In fact, he's in very good financial situation. 3 months ago, he received a sales bonus from his company for $120,000. What else? Your daughter-in-law Sophie has credit card debts of $34,000, designer clothes, expensive restaurants, 2 trips to Spain last year. And she's not pregnant. I checked her social media. 2 days ago, she posted a photo at a pub drinking beer. A pregnant woman wouldn't do that. Anne said a strong word I won't repeat. Richard continued. There's something more. I found messages in a public forum where Sophie participates. She talks about convincing her mother-in-law to sell her house. And I quote exactly, the old woman's almost fallen for it. When she sells, my mum and I split what's left after the deposit. The world stopped. Her mum? Yes. Sophie was planning to give part of the money to her mother. This was never just about the flat. It was a business between the two of them. I stood up, walked to the window. Outside, the neighborhood children were playing football in the street. The sun was shining, life continued, but I felt like something inside me had broken definitively. Does Daniel know about this? I can't confirm it, but he knows they don't need the money. That much I'm sure of. Anne took my hand. Margaret, that girl wants to rob you, and your son is letting her. I looked at the deeds I'd found under the rose bush. I looked at Peter's note. Never let anyone make you feel small. I turned to Richard. What can I do? Richard smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was a lawyer's smile who knows he has the winning cards. Mrs. Ellis, I can do many things, but first I need you to answer something. Do you want to defend yourself, or do you want to counterattack? Anne squeezed my hand. I thought about all the messages, the calls, the word circus, Daniel telling me I never asked him to raise him, Sophie calling me old, and for the first time in 68 years of life, I said something I never thought I'd say. I want to counterattack. Richard took out more papers from his briefcase. Perfect. Then I need you to formally authorize me to act on your behalf. We're going to do this properly, legally, so they can't turn things against you. I signed the documents he put in front of me. My hand trembled, but the signature came out clear. Now, Richard continued, I need access to any document you have related to your house, deeds, tax receipts, utility bills. Also, I need to know if they've ever asked you to sign anything, even if it seemed unimportant. Only the deeds I found buried, and they've never asked me to sign anything for them. Good. That gives us an advantage. Your house is completely in your name, with no liens or debts. No one can force you to sell it. But Sophie is going to try to pressure you more, and when she does, I need you to record the conversations. Record? Your phone has a recorder, doesn't it? Every time they call or visit you, record everything. It's legal as long as you're part of the conversation. Those recordings can be evidence if we need them. Anne nodded. I'll teach you how, Margaret. It's easy. Meanwhile, Richard said, I'm going to deepen the investigation. I want to know exactly how much money they have, what else they're hiding, and if there's anything more behind all this. Do you authorize me? Yes, I want to know the whole truth. Richard left. Anne stayed with me, teaching me to use the phone's recorder, making me practice until I did it well. Margaret, one more thing, she told me before leaving. You have to be strong. When you discover everything, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot. But remember, you didn't cause this. They chose to treat you this way. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel's face when he was a child. When he woke me up in the early hours to tell me he'd had a nightmare, I'd hug him, sing softly to him until he fell asleep again. At what point did that child become this man? Friday morning, as I expected, Sophie called. This time I activated the recorder. Margaret, good morning. Look, I know we've been pressuring you a lot, and I apologize, but we're truly desperate. Monday we lose the flat and, well, Daniel is devastated. He says you don't love him anymore. He says that? Yes. Last night he cried, Margaret, your son cried because of you. He says that after everything he's done, you reject him when he needs you most. The words were perfect. The dramatic tone. But I already knew the truth. Sophie, are you pregnant? There was a very brief pause, but I noticed it. Well, it's not certain yet, but there are symptoms. That's why we need the bigger flat for the baby. Lie. Everything was a lie. And does Daniel really need my help? Doesn't he have savings? Another pause. Margaret, you know how things are. Everything's so expensive. Of course Daniel works hard, but it's not enough. That's why we need you, because a mother always supports her children, doesn't she? Let me think about it this weekend. Monday I'll give you a definitive answer. Monday? But Margaret, Monday, Sophie. That's my final word. I hung up. I saved the recording with name and date. Saturday, Richard appeared again. He brought a thick folder. Mrs. Ellis, I found everything. And it's worse than I thought. He sat in front of me, opened the folder. Daniel not only received that $120,000 bonus, he also has savings of another $30,000 in an investment account. He alone needs to gather only $35,000 more for the deposit. He could ask the bank for a loan or get bridging credit. He doesn't need to sell your house. Then why? Why is it easier to get the money from me than to get into debt themselves? There's something more serious. Richard took out phone screenshot printouts. I managed to access public conversations between Sophie and her mother on social media. Look at this, I read, and with each word I felt my heart getting smaller. Mother, have you convinced the old woman yet? Remember, we need that money for the business, Sophie. She's closer than I thought, but she's giving in. I fed her the baby story, Mother. Haha, you're the best. When you have the money, pass me my part. $20,000 as we agreed. Sophie. Deal, though I can't stand the old woman. All day with her memories and old photos. She makes me sick, Mother. Hold on a bit. When she sells, you won't have to see her often. The letters looked blurry. I was crying without realizing it. Keep reading, Richard said softly. Fabi, does Daniel still not know about your part? Mother, better that way. Men just complicate things. Sophie, same here. I've already brainwashed him well. Now he also thinks his mum should sell. It was easier than I thought. Anne, who had arrived while I was reading, hugged me. I couldn't stop trembling. There's more, Richard said. Sophie's debts are from a failed business attempt. She and her mother wanted to open a boutique. They took out loans, bought expensive merchandise, but never sold anything. Now they're drowning in debt. Her mother lost her house last year, that's why she's renting. And they want me to lose mine to save them. Exactly. The flat they say they want to buy does exist, but the rush is a lie. It's still available. The seller doesn't have other buyers. I verified that too. I wiped the tears with the back of my hand. And Daniel? Does he know all this? I can't prove it completely, but I found this. He showed me another message. This was between Daniel and Sophie. Daniel. My mom is hesitating. Maybe we should try something else. Sophie. No, we've already invested too much time in this. Your mom is stubborn, but she'll break. She just needs more pressure. Let me handle this. Daniel. I don't know, Sophie. I feel bad. Sophie. You feel bad about asking your mom for help. Seriously, she's lived her whole life in that house. It's her turn now. It's our turn now. Stop being so soft. I closed my eyes. My son knew. Maybe he didn't know about the plan with his mother-in-law. Maybe he didn't know about the $20,000. But he knew they were pressuring me unjustly, and he allowed it. Mrs. Ellis, Richard said, with this evidence, we can do several things. We can report them for attempted fraud against an elderly person. We can request a restraining order. No. Both looked at me surprised. I don't want to put them in jail. I don't want lawsuits. I want something better. What do you want? I dried my last tears. Inside me, something had changed. The pain was converting into something else, into determination. I want them to feel what I felt. I want them to understand what they tried to do to me. I want justice, but not from judges. I want life to collect from them. Anne smiled. That's my Margaret. Richard nodded slowly. I understand. And do you have any plan in mind? Not yet. But Monday I'm going to give them my answer, and it's going to be an answer they'll never forget. That night, I took out the metal box again. I read all of Peter's letters. When I got to the last one, I found one I hadn't seen before. It was stuck to the bottom of the box. My dear Margaret, if you're reading this, it's because I'm no longer here. I want you to know you were the best thing in my life. But I also want you to know something important. You are a lioness, not a pet. Don't let anyone, not even our son, make you feel you're worth less than you're worth. You are strong, stronger than me, stronger than the world. Never forget that. I love you forever. Peter. I folded the letter carefully. I won't forget, my love, I whispered. I promise you. Sunday I spent the whole day thinking, planning, preparing myself, because Monday wasn't going to be just any day. Monday the circus was finally going to close. Monday dawned with a gray sky. Those skies that threaten rain, but never quite release the drops. I got up early, as always. I prepared my coffee, watered the plants, put on my wine-colored blouse, the one Peter said made me look elegant. I pulled back my hair, painted my lips with that peach shade I almost never use. If I was going to face them, I'd do it looking good. At 10 in the morning, Sophie called. I activated the recorder. Margaret, good morning. So have you thought about it? Yes, Sophie. I've thought about it. Oh, how wonderful. And I need to speak with both of you, with Daniel and you, personally. Perfect. You can come today. We're at home. Fine, I'll come this afternoon. But I'd rather you come to my house. I want to do this properly, with a notary, with witnesses. I want everything done right, and I want you to come to my house Saturday at 4 in the afternoon with Sophie. We're going to sign everything there. Mom, thank you. Thank you. I knew you'd understand. I love you. Those words, I love you, sounded so empty. See you Saturday, son. I hung up. I saved the recording. Anne hugged me. Margaret, are you sure about this? More sure than ever. Saturday dawned sunny, ironic. The important days of my life had always been cloudy or rainy. But this day, the day when everything would end, the sun was shining. Richard arrived at 2 with 2 other people, a notary public called Mr. Foster and a woman he introduced as his legal assistant. Monica, Mrs. Ellis, Mr. Foster is completely trustworthy. Monica is going to record everything. Ready. Also, there were Anne and her husband Mike as witnesses. And Diana, the neighbor who had shown me the recording of the party. She had agreed to come when I asked her. At 4 sharp, the doorbell rang. It was Daniel and Sophie. She wore a new dress, perfect makeup, an enormous smile. Daniel wore a pressed shirt and looked nervous but happy. Mom. Daniel hugged me tightly. Thank you for reconsidering. You don't know what this means to us. Sophie also hugged me. Margaret, you're an angel. Really, an angel? I pointed to the living room. Come in. We have to do this formally. When they entered and saw all the people, Sophie stopped dead. Who are they? Mr. Foster is a notary public. Richard is my solicitor. Anne and Mike are witnesses. And Diana? Well, Diana has something interesting to show you. Sophie's smile began to fade. Your solicitor? Mum, why do you need a solicitor? Sit down, please. They sat on the sofa. The rest of us formed a semicircle around them. Monica had her camera pointing. Before signing anything, I began, I want to clarify some points. Of course, Mum. Whatever you need. First, I want you to explain something to me. 2 weeks ago, you organized a party where you told 50 people that I had agreed to sell my house. Why did you do that? Sophie went pale. Daniel looked at his wife. Sophie, well, we thought you were going to accept. We just anticipated things a bit. Anticipated. Interesting word. Diana, can you play the recording? Diana took out her phone. Sophie's voice filled the room. My mother-in-law, in an act of immense love, has decided to sell her house to help us. Daniel closed his eyes. Sophie stood up. This is a trap. No, Sophie. This is the truth. Now sit down because we have much more to talk about. Richard opened his folder. Mrs. Sophie, can you confirm that you have credit card debts of $34,000? That's private. Can you confirm that you plan to give $20,000 to your mother from the money from the sale? Sophie froze. Daniel looked at her. What? And Mr. Daniel, Richard continued, can you confirm that you received a bonus of $120,000 3 months ago? My son looked at me. There was no longer confusion in his eyes. There was fear. Mom, I can explain. No need, son. Solicitor Richard already explained everything to me. Sophie's debts, the failed business with her mother, the bonus you received, the pregnancy that never existed. Everything. Sophie tried to leave. Mike blocked the door. Nobody leaves until we finish, Anne said firmly. Mrs. Ellis, said Mr. Foster the notary, do you confirm that you never intended to sell your house? That's right. Never. And do you confirm that you were pressured, manipulated, and publicly defamed by these people? I confirm it, Foster noted in his documents. Then I must inform you, Mr. Daniel and Mrs. Sophie, that what you attempted to do constitutes several crimes. Attempted dispossession through deception, economic abuse of an elderly person, and defamation. Mrs. Ellis has the right to press criminal charges. Sophie started crying. But they weren't tears of repentance. They were tears of rage. This is ridiculous. He's her son. We only asked for help. No, Sophie, I said, standing up. You didn't ask for help. You tried to rob me. There's a difference. Daniel had his head in his hands. Mum, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know everything. Sophie told me. What did she tell you, son? That I was old, that my life was over, that you should pressure me because I'm stubborn? Because I have recordings where you also said horrible things to me. I took out my phone, played his voice. I never asked you to raise me. Those were your decisions. Daniel broke down. He started crying. Not like a man, like a child. Forgive me, Mum, please. Richard cleared his throat. Mrs. Ellis, do you want to proceed legally? Everyone looked at me. Sophie with hatred, Daniel with desperation, Anne with pride, Diana with curiosity. I thought about Peter, about his letters, about his words. You are a lioness. I'm not going to put my son in jail, I said finally, but I am going to set conditions. What conditions? Daniel asked with a hoarse voice. 1, I don't want to see you for a complete year. 0 contact, 0 calls, 0 visits. Mum. 2, you're going to publish a public apology on social media, admitting that you lied about my supposed acceptance to sell the house, admitting that you pressured me unjustly. Sophie stood up again. Never. 3, I continued without looking at her. Daniel is going to therapy, individual therapy, to understand why he allowed his wife to treat me this way. I accept, Daniel said immediately. And 4, if at any moment you approach me again with intentions to manipulate or hurt me, Richard will proceed with all possible legal charges. And this time, there will be no mercy. The notary wrote everything down. Do you accept these terms? Daniel nodded. I accept everything, Mom. Everything. Sophie crossed her arms. This is abuse. No, Sophie, I said, looking her directly in the eyes. Abuse is what you did to me. This is justice. And if you don't accept, the solicitor proceeds with the criminal lawsuit right now. Richard took out some papers. They're ready. I just need your signature, Mrs. Ellis. Sophie gritted her teeth. I accept. They signed, each one. Anne and Mike signed as witnesses. The notary sealed everything. Done, Richard said. This is legally binding. If they break any term, we'll proceed. Daniel approached me. He tried to take my hand. I moved away. Mum, please let me explain. You have a year, Daniel. A year to think about what kind of man you want to be. The one who allows his mother to be mistreated, or the one Peter and I tried to raise. Mum, now please leave. They left. Sophie went out first, furious. Daniel stopped at the door, looked at me one last time, and left too. When the door closed, I collapsed on the sofa. Anne hugged me. I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. But these tears were different. They were tears of liberation. The following days were strange, silent. No calls at 7 in the morning, no messages asking if I'd thought about selling. No surprise visits with estate agents, just silence. And that silence, which before would have frightened me, now felt like a gift. Tuesday afternoon, Anne came with scones and tea. "How are you doing, Margaret?" "Better, much better." "Have you seen social media?" I shook my head. I barely used Facebook, and only to see photos of my cousin's children. Anne took out her phone. "Daniel posted this yesterday," she showed me the screen. It was a long post with a photo of Daniel alone, without Sophie. "I want to offer a public apology. Weeks ago, my wife and I organized a gathering where we informed people that my mother had decided to sell her house to help us financially. That information was false. My mother never accepted such a thing. We pressured her, manipulated her, and used her name without her permission. My mother is a dignified woman who didn't deserve that treatment. I publicly ask forgiveness for my behavior. I'm ashamed of the person I became. I'm sorry, Mom." I read the words 3 times. There were 847 comments. Most were supportive of me. Some harshly criticized Daniel, others Sophie. Sophie posted something too. Anne searched her profile. Look. Sophie's message was shorter, colder. "I offer apologies for the confusion generated regarding my mother-in-law's situation. It was a misunderstanding. I regret any inconvenience caused. She wasn't even taking direct responsibility. It was a non-apology." "That woman is beyond hope," Anne said. I closed the phone and gave it back to Anne. "I don't want to know any more about them." The months passed. September, October, November. I used part of the money Peter had saved to renovate the bathroom that had needed repairs for years. I hired a young man from the neighborhood, Tony, Mrs. Chui's son. He did excellent work. I also started taking knitting classes at the community center. I met other women my age. We gathered Tuesdays and Thursdays. We knitted, chatted, laughed. One of them, Matilda, told me she'd also had problems with her family. Her daughter had asked to borrow money and never paid it back. "But I learned," she told me, "that sometimes self-love is more important than family love. And that doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a person." Her words stayed with me. In December, 2 weeks before Christmas, Richard called me. "Mrs. Ellis, the 1-year deadline is almost up. Have you thought about what you want to do after?" "What do you mean?" "If you want to have contact with your son again, if you want to give him another chance?" I hadn't thought about that. I'd been so busy rebuilding my life that I hadn't thought about the after. "I don't know, solicitor. I still don't know." "That's fine. You have time. But prepare yourself, because when the deadline ends in January, he'll probably try to contact you." That night, I took out Daniel's letter again. I'd read it so many times I knew every word by memory. "What do I do, Peter?" I asked the air. "Do I give him another chance, or is it too late?" There was no answer, just the wind moving the curtains. The week before Christmas, Anne invited me to her house for Christmas dinner. "I don't want you to spend Christmas alone, Margaret." "I won't be alone. I'll be at peace." But I accepted the invitation anyway. At Anne's dinner were her children, grandchildren, husband, some cousins. There were mince pies, mulled wine, music. It was warm. It was family. Anne's youngest nephew, a boy about 6, approached me. "Are you Mrs. Ellis?" "Yes, love." "My aunt says you're very brave." "Is that true?" I crouched to be at his level. "What do you think?" "I think so, because my mum says brave people are those who do the right thing, even when it hurts." I hugged him. That child knew more about life than many adults. That night, walking home through the streets decorated with Christmas lights, I saw families dining through windows. I heard Christmas carols. I saw children running with sparklers, and for the first time in months, I thought about Daniel as a child, when he was 6 and helped me set up the nativity scene. How excited he got about Father Christmas. How he hugged me before sleeping. Where had that child stayed? When I got home, I found something at the door. A box, not very big, with a red bow. It had no card, no name. I took it inside. I opened it carefully. Inside was a photo album, Old photos I hadn't seen in years. Baby Daniel. Daniel at his first communion. Daniel graduating from college. Daniel and me in Blackpool. And on the last page, a recent photo. Daniel at the therapist's. He looked tired, gaunt, but there was something different in his eyes. There was a note attached. Mum, I found these photos at my house. I realized I'd forgotten who we were, who you were, who I was. The therapist says remembering is part of healing, so I'm remembering every day. Merry Christmas. With love, the son I'm trying to become again. Daniel. I closed the album, hugged it against my chest, and in the solitude of my living room, with only the light from the Christmas tree I'd put up that morning, I did something I didn't expect to do. I forgave. Not completely. Not yet, but a little, enough to think that maybe, just maybe, the circus had closed, but the story hadn't ended. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this story, the ones on your screen are just for you. If this story brought a word, a thought, or a feeling to your mind, share it in the comments. Let's see whose words will touch the most hearts. Thank you for listening.